Welcome back, everybody. Today we are going to find out why did so many German officers have scars. I know why they have scars, but do you know? And let's see if this guy, Johnny Johnson, has it correct. Let's go.
Mensur, or German academic fencing, is why so many German officers and the elite wore scars on their faces in the 19th and 20th centuries. These scars were badges of honor and worn with pride, though not always on the face of honorable men. They were the mark of having belonged to a Mensur organization.
Mensur organization. That's already wrong. There is no such thing as a Mensur organization. The Mensur is called the matchup of people fighting in the academic fencing. Du gehst auf Mensur. One is going on Mensur, yeah. So,
Usually reserved for the upper class and or those with a university education, where a student could join a Mensur fraternity or corporation.
Mensur fraternity. There's a lot of fraternities still in Germany, which are very different from the fraternities in the USA, where in the USA everybody is just drinking and getting stupid. In Germany, the fraternities are still organized like in the 18th and 19th century, and maybe 70% of them have this academic fencing still today.
Oh no, for God's sake, Bismarck, have you any decency left? I've been named for life, disfigured! Be quiet!
Academic fencing in 19th and 20th century Germany and some neighboring countries like Austria was much different than it is today. They did not use the same swords or equipment fencers use in modern times. German students used Mensurschläger, or sometimes just called Schläger,
Yeah.
designed specifically for the sport. These swords varied regionally, but were designed to cut, in a similar way to a razor. The duels were known as Mensuren and somewhat ritualized. Some protective clothing could be worn, such as padding on the arm, and some protection for the eyes and nose. The duels involved attempting to strike the opponent on the head or face, and the duel typically ended once blood was drawn.
You...
The Royal Flash.
These duels were not so much about winning or striking a blow, but showing courage and the ability to take a hit.
Well, they were also about winning. You lose if you get hit too many times and you bleed too much. That's when the game ends, or it ends after 20 Gänge, like 20 rounds.
A duel
I know because I have been in a German fraternity and I did go in Mensur.
duelist in such a match was just as proud to bravely take a cut to the face as they were to give one. Mensur was not a typical duel. There wasn't necessarily a winner or a loser, just opportunities to display one's character. Unlike in fencing, the participants didn't move
I don't know how it was back in the day in the 19th century, but nowadays it's very much about winning. And if you lose, you get a scar, yeah. The winner can also get a scar. Well, it's more honorable to win, I would say.
back or forth. In fact, dodging or evading wasn't allowed and could end the match with dishonor. The participants were to stand their ground and remain at arm's length until the match is over, which was overseen by a referee and often a doctor.
What is that? There's a woman in a fraternity. German fraternities don't allow women. There's a few that allow, but they don't fence.
These scars, called a smite or Schmiss in German, were so valued some even felt they elevated a man enough to show they were good husband material. Figures such as statesman Otto von Bismarck stated the scars to be a sign of bravery and believed a man's courage could be judged by the number of scars on their cheeks.
Oh, really? A number.
Universities were where the sport was refined. In the 16th century, students were allowed to carry swords to and from school in some German provinces to protect
Really?
themselves. Naturally, this led to many duels. This could and did lead to
Drunk
fatalities.
duels.
Regulated duels in the 17th century were introduced to help reduce these fatalities. Refereed duels became safer and popular, and duels slowly evolved into a sport. This sport further exploded in popularity during peacetime in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, with military officers looking to prove themselves.
Pish to you.
Dueling was outlawed by the Nazi Party in the 1930s.
What? Really?
Hitler had less an issue with Mensur than he did with student corporations that represented the old aristocratic class, which he despised. Despite
Did
this,
he?
they still took place in secret. This was a sport that was so popular for a time. Students who were unable to join fraternities sometimes gave themselves scars with a razor. After the war, it remained prohibited by occupied Allied forces for a time, as it was considered to have a military association. The sport returned in the early 1950s and is still practiced today, with significant improvements to safety, greatly decreasing the chance of any scars.
Well, that is not completely true.
All right, I'm Johnny. Thanks for
Oh,
watching.
that's it.
Till
So he said
significant improvements to safety, greatly decreasing the chance of any
there's still a very high chance of getting a scar. What you see over here is not a mensur, it's just practicing. So for practicing, one would wear all of this, you know, even the helmet, because you don't want to get a scar while practicing. If you go on mensur, that means usually you fight against a student from another fraternity with sharp weapons. And what you are wearing is not this helmet. You are wearing this glasses here that protects your eyes and your nose from a cut. But you can cut basically everywhere on the cheek, on the head, on the top of the head. And most of my fellow students who went on mensur also got a schmiss somewhere. One guy, he got hit in the middle of the head here. He started at a fraternity with me, and the skin split up from here to here, and it went down, and you could see his whole head. The skull of his head you could see. But it is fine because there's always a doctor on site to like fix him up, stitching him up again. And I also did fight only one mensur, because usually you have to fight 3 or 4 mensur to join the fraternity as a full member. But I only fought one, and then I moved to a different city and I couldn't stay in the fraternity. But yeah, I was fighting with sharp weapons. And in the first mensur, you are only allowed to hit the top of the head. You're only allowed to do a certain set of moves. You can't do the side moves in the first mensur yet. You're only allowed to do that in the second mensur. And that's when you usually get the joker, you know, often. But in the first mensur, it is not very likely to get hit unless you're really crappy at mensur. So I didn't get a schmiss, and I'm not sad about not getting one. Actually, there are a lot of fraternities still in Germany, maybe like 60-70% of them still do this academic fencing. Even though it is outlawed in Germany, they still do it because it's tradition from like 200 years ago. Usually how this happens, they gather in this like cellars, and there's like something called the Blutwanne, the blood bath kind of thing, because there's a lot of blood on the floor and they don't clean it up for different reasons. Being a student, it was pretty fun to be there, because all the fraternities, I was in Heidelberg, studying in Heidelberg, the city with the most fraternities in all Germany. They had like 40 fraternities over there. It's pretty fun because all the fraternities have huge houses and you have to pay very little rent. You pay like, I paid €80 rent per month for a room on a 2,000 square meter house. They had like a billiard room, a reading room, a library, party cellars. Yeah, it's just a huge house. I was living there with like 16 other people, all from the fraternity, and the beer was for free. So that's actually a great thing to have as well. Not that I could study much, drinking so much, but it was a good time. And fighting on with those Mensurschläger was also pretty fun. It's not the most crazy sport, but it's an experience. I still have my mensur muscle, because here this muscle here doesn't exist here. It's not from wanking. It's from this movement you do like over and over. So basically this is the movement you do with a heavy Schläger, and you get a big muscle here. But yeah, if you want to know more about this, just let me know. I can make a separate video, but I think I have talked enough about mensur. But it's pretty interesting, and I'm glad something like that still exists today, because it's a long history of tradition. One thing I should mention is that before 1900 or something like that, the academic fencing did not exist as it exists now. The academic fencing was introduced because too many students died from duels. The fencing before was like even hitting with the sharp weapons on the body, but that was outlawed because too many students died, which is not what you want to have, having the smart people die away just because they disagree with each other. Good video by Johnny Johnson. I hope my take gave more information. Too little information in there. And with that said, Bierjunge. See you in tomorrow's video.